everyone, welcome you all. In our previous video, we have seen how we can write a test cases for stored function in SQL. Now in the today's video, I'm going to show you how we can automate SQL stored functions using JDBC. So in the previous videos also, I have shown you how to create a Java project and how to create a Maven project basically, and we have added all required dependencies in Eclipse. And also we have seen automation test cases for stored procedures. So in the similar way, we will also create automation test cases for stored functions. So let me open the project. So this is the Maven project, which is already created. Inside this, I'm going to create a new package. So earlier we already created stored procedures testing one package, and we have automated stored procedures. Similarly, I'm going to create one more package, and I will name it as stored functions testing. Stored functions or stored function testing. All right, so once you created your new project, a new package, now inside this, I'm going to create a new TestNG class. So I will name it as a stored function testing, SF testing, and then click on the finish. So as soon as you created a new test, so I'm going to create these test cases in the TestNG style. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, let me just create two different methods, setup method and tar method. So in the setup method, void setup. Inside the setup method, and I just want to execute this method before the class, and inside this I will just create the connection to the database. So import this before class from TestNG. Now in the setup method, I just want to create a connection to the database. So for that, I'm going to create one connection object. I'll define the variable connection con, and this is a connection class, import from java.sql. So now I'm going to create a connection to the database. So connection object equal to driver manager, which we need to import from java.sql, and dot get connection. So these are the connection details which we have mentioned here, which will connect to the MySQL. So this will throw some exception, just add it. And before that, don't forget to add MySQL dependency in the pom.xml so that we will have all the classes methods which we can access only through JDBC driver. So we have already added MySQL connector dependency in the pom.xml. We need to make sure that. So the setup method I'll execute before the class so that it will get connected to the database. So after that, I will also create one more method called tdon. And this particular method I'll execute after completion of all the test methods. So I'll define as a after class. Okay, so this method I'll use it for closing the connection. So I'll just say connection dot close. Right. So once you close the connection, then this will also throw some exception. Just add this. Okay, now let us see how to create a test method. So what's the test case? First one. So check stored functions are available in the database or not, or check stored functions or exist in the database or not. So for that, we need to execute this query and we need to verify the results. So let me just create a new test function or test method. So void test underscore stored function exist, and I'll make this as test annotation, and also I'll give a priority to this. I'll say priority 1. Now import this test annotation. All right. So now I need to test the stored function is available in the database or not. So for that, we need to execute this query. So how we can execute this query? So we can execute this statement or query through statement class object. So first of all, we need to create a statement class object. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm just creating one more class object. Let's say statement stmt. And this statement object I'm going to create here. Statement equal to, by using connection, we can create a statement. Connection dot create a statement, and then by using this statement object, we can call the method called execute query. Execute query is a method. Statement dot execute query. So this particular method will execute the query. So whichever query you want to execute, we can just specify the query. So here, this is our query. So especially I want to check this particular stored function is available or not. So I'm just executing this query here. Can remove the semicolon, and this is the statement which we are going to execute. So after that, what happens? We need to add this row declaration, and it is done. So if you don't want to create a special statement, like additional statement for a create statement, what we can do is we can just avoid this stempty statement and you can directly specify this here. Okay, then you can just remove this. So we have just combined the two statements. So for instead of creating the statement and storing into some other variable and using that variable again, we will call the execute query. Instead of doing two steps, I can just make it is one step. So first we have created a connection, created a statement by using connection object dot execute query and specify the query. So this will go and execute the query. And whatever the statement which is executed, that execute query will return the result set. So that I'm going to store in result set variable. So here I'm going to create one global variable, which is result set. I say RS. Now import this result set also from java.sql. Now I'm going to store this result into the RS. So now I got the result set. Now, once you got the result set, let's focus on the first row. So because we have only one row in that result set, so I say rs.next. And after that, we need to get the value from the result set. Suppose, let us say when you execute this statement manually. So what is an output we are getting here is we are getting this output. So from these all columns, we need only the name column value. So which we need to compare with our expected value. So name column value, I need to retrieve from the result set. So we are only focused on the first row. So what we can do is here, I say rs dot get a string. Okay, rs dot get a string. So which column it is? The name column. So that we can specify. So this will return exact value. Now we need to compare this with our expected value. So I can directly put one assertion here, asset dot asset equals, and you can say get a string, rs dot get a string will give you actual value, and that value we will compare with our expected value. So what is our function name I'm expecting is customer level. That's it. So with one assertion, we will be able to do that. So once we execute this statement, which will return the result set, which contains only one single row. So in the rs.next, we'll focus on that particular row, and then we are getting the value from the name column and then compare with our expected value. So this will perform the testing. So which will test this particular stored function is available in the database or not. Let's execute the code now. Run as test. All right, so now it is getting passed. So that means same stored procedure or stored function, which is already available in the database. All right, so like this, let us create one more test case. Now let us look at the second one. So check stored function customer level, return customer level when it calls from the SQL statement. So now what we need to call the statement, then we will get the result. In the same way, we will also execute our test query, again get the result set. And once you get both the result set, because select command is always return the result set. So one result set is written by the actual statement and other result set is written by the test query or test statement. So finally, we will compare these two result sets. Okay. Now, so to run this SQL select statement directly, we can create a statement object through connection and we will execute it. And here callable statement is not required because when you invoke the stored procedure, so then we need a callable class callable statement. But here the normal statement class is required. So let's go and create another test. I'm just copying this as usual. And this is another test, priority 2. And the name of the test is, I can just rename it, test customer level with SQL statement. Test customer level with SQL statement. So now here we created a statement dot execute query. So like this, you can directly execute this query because this is also select query. Inside the select query, we are calling the function. So we can directly put here. So select customer name, customer level from customer. So this will return all the customers information, customer names along with the customer level. And that I'm going to store in this RS. So let's make it as RS1. So I will create another result set. Let's say RS1. Okay. Now we got the result set 1 from the SQL statement call. So inside the SQL statement, we are internally calling the stored function and getting the result set here. So when I execute the same statement, same statement in the SQL, and what this will return? So this will return all the customers' names along with the customer level. So this is all one result set, which we have stored in the variable called rs1. Okay. So now we need to execute our test query. So this is our test query, which we need to execute. And then we will compare the result set. So for that, what I will do is I will write one more statement like this. And here, this time I'm executing the test query. I'm trying to execute my test query. So let's copy my test query here in the result set 2. Go back to your Eclipse. And here I'm pasting it here. So this is my test query. So rs2 equal to con dot create statement dot execute query. And here we are returning customer name and multiple conditions are included. And finally, this is the statement. So this particular statement will return another set, another result set rs2. I'm just calling it a rs2. So I have not defined that result set. I'm just defining here rs2. So now the rs1 is actually calling the stored function using the select statement. In rs2, we have a test results which are written by the test query. So finally, what we need to compare the two result set. So how to compare the two result set? In the previous video, I have shown you, we have to write our user defined method in Java method, and that will compare the two result sets. That is a reusability method. So I'm just creating once again here. So this is the reusability method. So compare result set, and when you pass the two result set into this particular method, and which will compare and finally returns the true or false. So let me import this string utils. Okay, so this is the same function which we created earlier also at the time of stored procedure testing. The same function or same method I'm using here, compare result set. It will basically take the two result sets and compare the data in the both the result set, and finally, if both are equal, then returns to both are not equal, then return false. This is a user defined method which is created to compare two result sets. So now from the test method, I'm just going to call. Okay, so I have result set 1, I have result set 2. So result set 1 contains a result set which is written by the function, and the result set 2 which contains a result set which is written by the test query. So now we need to compare both the result set. Both the result set we need to compare. So how to compare both the result set? So to compare both the result set, we can just call that function. Okay, so how to call the function? So compare result set, and here rs1 comma rs2. So I'm passed two arguments. So this will return true or false. If it is written true, means what? Both the result sets are equal. So I'm directly keeping inside the assertion. Assert dot assert equals rs1 dot rs2. So here assert dot assert equals, and inside this we need to call the function, right? Compare results, and this will return true or false, and that value we need to compare with our expected value, which is true. So this is the actual assertion which we can add inside the test method. So assert dot assert equals, inside this I'm calling this compare result set. I'm bypassing rs1 and rs2. So this rs result set 1 received inside the result set 1, and this rs2 is received inside the result set 2, and we'll compare both the result set and return the result set. It will return the true or false. Okay, and that value we are comparing with our expected value. So this is a final assertion. So now let us execute this and see whether it's working fine or not. So the first method I'm just commenting for now. Now let us execute this test method. So you can check the customer level stored function through SQL statement. All right, so let's run it. Run as test-ng test. Okay, so now it is got passed. You can just go back and see. Yeah, so now my test is got passed. So whatever the results which is written by this SQL statement, even our test query also written the same result set. So that's the reason my test is got passed. And similarly, let's say the third test case. So in the third test case, we need to check our stored function is able to call through stored procedure. So in the database, we already seen like the stored procedure is already created. If I just go and see this once again in the database. So this is a stored procedure which is already created in the database, get customer level. And here we pass the customer ID, and that will return the customer level inside this variable. And after that, we will print the value which is available in this variable. Let me first execute the first call, executed, and second call. Now it is written in the customer level. Now, first we will execute this through execute query method. And after that, we will execute the test query and then we will compare the results. Now, let us see how we can send the call to this store procedure. So in the previous videos, we have seen how to call the store procedure using JDBC, right? So we need to create a callable statement. So whenever you invoke the store procedure call, we need to use callable statement. But whenever you want to invoke the select statement, we just use a statement class object. That's the only difference. Okay, now let me create one more test. So here I'm going to create one more test. So this time I'm just going to test my store function with the store procedure call. Okay, let me just create void test customer level with the store procedure. I'll make it as a test annotation. All right, so test annotation I have included. So what is the first step we need to do here? As a first step, we need to execute these procedure calls. Okay, we need to execute these procedure calls and then we need to get the output into this variable. So to execute this store procedure call, what we need to do is we need to create callable statement. So we already created a normal statement that is used for executing select statements. But to call the store procedure, we need a callable statement object. Okay, so now import this callable statement object from java.sql. So by using this empty callable statement, we will able to execute the store procedure call. Now, so come to the test method. So here by using this connection, first we need to prepare a call. So here we need to call the store procedure, right? How to call the store procedure? So first of all, let me copy this. This is the store procedure call, but we need to follow the syntax. So in the curly braces, we need to specify call get customer level. And here, this is a first input parameter. So we cannot directly pass the input and output parameter values. So we need to pass a question mark first. So this input parameter, this is output parameter. So 2 question marks. And then close the statement. So this particular statement will prepare the call, and that I'm going to store CSTMT callable statement variable. And this will throw some exception, just add this. So now by using this callable statement, we need to set input parameter and then we need to register the output parameter. So how to set the input parameter? By using set int method. So because input parameter is a customer ID, so we need to use set int method. And what's the value in the which position? In the first position. What's the value you want to add? 131. That's my customer ID. So this is the input parameter we are passing into in the first place. Now in the second place, this is output parameter. So output parameter, we need to register that. So how can register? CSTMT dot register output parameter. In which position? Second position. And what is that parameter type? Is a varchar type. So I can simply say types.varchar. So this is how we need to register the output parameter. And once you set the input parameter and once you register output parameter, then we need to execute this query. So by using this callable statement, we will execute this query by using execute query method. And this will able to execute our store procedures. But store procedure is not returning any output, but the output will be stored in the output parameter. So that we need to access. So how to access the output parameter? By taking the same callable statement dot, and the output parameter is a string type. So I say get a string of. In which position output parameter is defined? In the second position. So I say second position. And this will exactly give you the value that is your customer level. I'm just storing into the string variable. I say customer level. So with this, what we have achieved, we have sent SQL call, or we have called the store procedure, and then by passing input parameter, and then we register the output parameter. So once you executed your store procedure, then we get the output parameter value into this variable. So we got the final output from the store procedure call finally. Now we need to also execute our test query, and then we will compare the output. So now we need to execute this test query. So this is simple select statement. So to run the select statement, what you will do, we will just create a statement and execute query. So by using connection object dot create statement dot execute query. So execute query. So here we can directly specify the test query. So I'm just going to write the test query directly here in the double quotations and then semicolon. Okay. So now what this statement will return? This will return the result set, because it is a select statement which will return the result set. So that I'm going to store you in result set variable rs. So now when you call the store procedure, which will return the output in the output parameter variable, that we have access to custom level variable. We have stored that value in the customer level. And even this statement also return the result set and will be stored in the rs. Now from the rs, we need to extract the customer level value. Okay, customer level value we need to extract. So for example, even if you run this statement here, which will return the customer level. So in the second position, this value is there. So that we need to extract from this rs. So we need to first focus on the first row, rs.next. This will focus on the row. Then we need to get the value, rs.get the string, because the customer level is a string type of data. So get the string. And what is the column value which we have given here is customer level. So that exactly we have to specify. And this will exactly give you the value of customer level. It can be diamond or silver or platinum, whatever it is. And what is this? This is also string value, but which is expected customer level. Right? So previously we captured the customer level from the stored procedure call. Now we have captured the customer level by sending the test query. Okay. And now we need to compare customer level, which is written by the stored procedure or stored function. And now stored function in the sense, again, stored procedure internally called the stored function. So finally we got this value from the stored procedure. Now this is the value we got it from the test query. So now we need to compare these two. So to compare these two, these are not a result set actually. These are just two strings type of data. So these are not result set. So we can directly compare by using assert equals, and then specify the customer level, which is actually coming from store procedure. And this is expected customer level. This is actually coming from the test query. So now this is the actual test. So let me just comment the second one also. Now let us execute this test method. Run as test. All right, so now it is getting failed. Now we'll see why it is getting it. Parameter number 2 is not an output parameter, So we did a mistake here. So what is the mistake we have done? So parameter number 2 is not an out parameter, it is saying. And again, go back and recheck. So here we are passing two parameters. And first parameter in the first position, 131 we set. And after that, what we have done, we have 131 in the first position we set. In the second position, types equal to varchar also we specified, and execute query. And here you can just look at here from the statement, get a string of 2, and we also capture the customer level. This is also perfectly fine. And after that, we send this connection detail. We have executed this query, and then rs.next we have done. And here rs.get a string customer level, so which will actually return the value in the expected customer level, and finally we compare it. So I don't see any issue. So let us see one more time. When you call the stored procedure, so we haven't closed this bracket curly braces, so we have to close it. All right, so now let me just execute one more time. So our stored procedure and also our test query, once you execute it, so the result value should be the same. Run as test. All right, so now it is getting passed. Okay, so now we are able to execute our stored function through stored procedure also. We are getting the same results. So now what we have done is we have successfully compared the results. Like in the first test case, we have seen the stored function is exist or not in the database. In the second test, we have checked our stored function is able to call through SQL statement. In the third test case, we have seen our stored function is able to call through stored procedure. Okay, so all the test cases which we will able to automate through JDBC. So apart from this, if any stored or if any stored functions is able to handle the exceptions, so those stored functions also we will able to test manually. So while passing some invalid input to the stored functions and whether it is giving proper message or not to the user. So those type of test cases also we can test manually. Okay. So this is how we can test stored functions along with the stored procedures in the database. And here the most important thing is your database design and requirement document. So accordingly, you have to create more number of test cases for stored procedures and stored functions. Okay. So that's all for this video, guys. In the next video, we will see another topics. Thanks for watching.